This video is sponsored by Warlord Games. Do you have lots of tiny little toy soldiers and you're not quite sure how to paint them? Worried that you might have to paint them exactly the same way that you paint your larger toy soldiers? Well, fear not, for that's exactly what I'm going to cover in this video. I'm Peachy, and this is Peachy Tips. Painting miniatures is great. I love it. It's my favourite thing. But sometimes the miniatures can get quite small and it can get a little stressful because sometimes you're like, do I have to paint them the same way I paint the larger ones, like my 28mm or my 32mm size figures? Do I have to paint them like that? No, you don't. And that's the whole purpose of this video, about me talking the different techniques and processes and tactics, I suppose, on how I paint smaller figures or smaller scale figures. In this particular video, I'm going to be covering some models from the Hail Caesar Epic Battles range, or the new Hannibal set that's going to be coming out. In fact, it'll be on your shelves now when this video's out. So with them being epic range figures, they are a lot smaller, granted. You'd think maybe the details would be smaller and there's lots of more fine details you've got to try and paint. No, actually, they're scaled appropriately, I think. And this is the great thing, that you've got to just change your approach and tactics on how you paint them, like you would, let's say, a 28mm figure in comparison to a large bust or a 54mm figure. All the different scales, you approach painting them differently, and that's no different with the epic range stuff. My approach is quick, fast, dirty, but actually just a couple of little details here and there picked out, whether that's bright colours on shields or like the odd little symbol, or making an effort on some cloaks or some plumes. That's the thing that stands out in the battlefield, because actually at arm's length you're not going to see all those details. Obviously you can tell they've got faces, but they don't have the detail that 28mm figures have, or 54mm figures, and so on and so forth. So you don't have to be as precious when you're painting them. And I, in this video, as you'll notice, I'm certainly not precious, but it all comes together at the end. Now, with the stuff I'm going to be showing in this, is they're not going to win awards. As single miniatures on their own, I'm not painting them for that. I'm not painting them to win an award and put in like a single miniature category. So take the Hastati, for instance. Standard Roman line infantry. They come in like a nice block of 30. You get like a strip of the fronts on the first 10, then it's like just some heads in the middle, and then the backs on the back 10. Obviously they've all got heads and stuff, but it's not lots of single models you have to all glue together, which is genius. But you get so many of those in the box set, you get loads and loads and loads. And it's the same for all the other different troop types as well. So there's a lot of figures to paint this set. I mean, we're talking hundreds, thousands even. So you got to change your approach. It's not going to be the same way as painting like a black powder army, and you need to do like a couple of hundred figures, and probably more than that. It's very different, and that's the goal of this video, is to remove any stress of like, oh, but I've got to like peck the faces out, and I've got to spend ages on the chainmail, and they've got little skirts and they've got straps on the back of the legs. I mean, if you want to do that, fine, but I'm going to be picking out colours that stand out from a distance. Squint your eyes, you're like, yep, that's legs, yep, that's a spear, yep, that's a shield, yep, that's a face. That's the process I'm going to go with. Now, spray paints are going to be your biggest ally here as well. And the reason for that is it just speeds the process along. Now, in this guide, I've used a couple of different spray colours, and that was just to help things along. So if I take the Hastati again, for instance, I sprayed them all red. It made sense because they've got red shields, they've got red plumes, and they've got lots of red cloaks. Then I just pick out the other details like the boots and the spears and the silvers and the golds and stuff like that on the helmets or bronzes. Take the Principe or the Triarii, and most of those got chainmail and spear tips. So actually it made sense to spray them silver as opposed to red, because yeah, I could do like the odd red shield and the red sleeve, but there's a lot more silver on those models. And it was the same for the Libyan heavy infantry as well. I mean, they're really pretty, but again, they've got lots of chainmail. So that's the thing you've got to bear in mind. I mean, things like horses and stuff, and there was loads of little dudes. Like, I've not actually painted everything from the stuff that's been sent me, but for like the cavalry, I do cover like painting a general, which kind of covers painting cavalry as well. I sprayed that brown. I hate painting horses, and I put that out there. Horses are my biggest bugbear. It's not because I hate horses. I love horses. Horses are great. They look great on the battlefield. It's just, there's just a lot of like horse flesh, and then all the horse sort of bridal furniture and stuff like that. And even on smaller scale, I'm like, oh my God, they've even got like reins and stuff. It's fine. I spray them brown, give them a dry brush, pick out the odd colour here and there. You know, it's quite straightforward. So you might want to mix it up a bit, maybe spray some grey, maybe spray some brown, maybe spray some black. It's up to you how you do it, but I've just used a handful of different sprays, The majority in this video is going to be a red spray for the Hastati and other things if I see fit to do it. Silver is going to be the majority colour used here for a lot of things. Brown for like horses and skirmishes. And I've also used grey as well. The grey is, if I can't decide, I don't know what colour to spray it, grey is better. But actually now in hindsight, sometimes maybe brown is better because there's like brown spears, there's brown boots. So this is the thing, you know, as the painting develops, and I could plan out loads, but even after like painting a whole bunch of stuff, I'm like, actually, I'll change that spray paint. Oh, I'll do that differently. Now in this guide, I don't actually cover painting the Iberian infantry, but I originally sprayed those grey, and in hindsight, I should have sprayed them brown because they got lots of browny bits on them, and I kind of dry brush over the cloaks and then just change the tones of that. But the theory's there from all the other paint guides I cover, so just follow that guide and then just change the colours out how you want to. You know, if you want blue shields instead of red shields, go for blue shields. And that's the thing with this paint guide as well. It's not like an all-encompassing, this is how you paint everything from the box set. It's to equip you to understand how to paint everything from the box set. So using a spray paint, for instance, is going to speed things along. Picking out and blocking out some colours, washing all over, and then just being tactical with like tidying back up, picking out the odd highlight if you feel it's necessary. Now, when I was picking out the details, like on the shields and stuff, I freehanded loads of little designs. That was me doing that because I didn't get any of the decals at the time. You do get loads in the box, so don't feel that you have to like freehand all the shield designs. That was just me flexing and also not having access to any decals at that time for doing the video. But why Hail Caesar and Ancients, Peach? That's a bit different, and epic as well. Well, there's a load of scratches to itch here. I've not touched any epic related stuff for a long while. I've started many ancient armies and never quite finished them. I started a Macedonian army, based that weirdly off the colours from Rome Total War 1, which was orange, black and white. That's not the colours of the Macedonian Empire. They're a lot more pastel-y and bright and pretty than Rome 1. Don't use Rome Total War as your guide for historical accuracy. That's what I learned. I then tried to start a Carthaginian army. I'm a big fan of Carthaginians. I don't know why. I think I just like the variety, maybe. I also like Romans. I like everything. Gauls, Romans, Greeks, you name it. I'm behind it. But I've never really got around to doing a full army. And when Warlord approached me and said, would you mind looking at doing a video about like Hail Caesar because it's coming out, we'd really like to promote it, I was kind of like, yeah, I will. That sounds cool because I like ancients. I've not really done much to cover that on the channel, but also like the ways you go about painting smaller scale stuff, not only is going to be fun for me, but hopefully useful for you, the viewer, as well. So I was more than happy to do a fun little video about painting tiny little Romans and Carthaginians. It's right up my alley. Now, before we dive into painting, one thing you will notice as well in this video is I'm going to be painting most of the things on the sprue. I don't normally do that. I don't normally paint things on the sprue. I tend to like to build them all up, glue them all together, rarely have sub-assemblies. If it's cavalry, I have the rider separate from the horse. But with this epic range stuff, it made so much sense to keep them on the actual sprue because I've only got most of the actual feed lines attached to the bottom, so you don't need to worry about that. You've got like some that kind of stick to the shoulders on either side, which once they're clipped off is just a tiny little bit of paintwork. And because you're not like doing larger scale models and you've got all those blends in there and you've got those highlights in there, you're just going to block out whatever colour is relevant on that side. So if it's like a bit of a shield, put some gold on it. If it's a bit of cloth, put some red on it or whatever. So yes, it's very rare. I paint things on the sprue. Makes 100% sense to do it in this video. So let's just crack on and paint some epic size units. So I'm going to start first with the Romans, and the first unit I'm going to cover is the Hastati. So the first thing I did was I got myself the sprues cut up into little shapes and then sprayed them the relevant colour that's needed. So with this, I just cut out a little corner off the actual Roman sprue and then sprayed that red. Again, make sure you go around both sides, get a good bit of even coverage, but we don't go too mad though because you don't want to clog up any detail that is there. So first off, I'm going to get some pure red, put it on the palette, load up a little dry brush, and then as always try and remove as much of that pigment as possible. I don't want to remove too much because I still want some of it to show up on the actual Romans themselves, and then it's just a matter of flicking back and forth and picking out some of those raised areas. This is a messy job. You're going to get so many ugly stages at this point, but just work your way around. Your real focus here is the shields really and the robes, and don't forget to the middle rankers and of course the front and back rankers as well. Then I get some flesh here. I'm using some barbarian flesh. It's not quite a dry brush what I'm doing here. I've just got some paint on my brush. I'm just going sideways and it's just picking out the extremities like the cheeks, the brows, the nose. And then later on when I apply a wash, that will fill in all the cracks. So don't stress it too much right now. And then next up is to pick out any other flesh details. So that's going to be like things like the back of the legs. I was quite neat to start off with. I don't know why I was doing that. And in the end, I just decided, no, just paint the whole thing. Don't worry about the straps. I think I was in like 28mm figure mode still. So yeah, I just literally pick out the whole back of the leg in flesh. Again, doesn't matter if you splodge here, you can always tidy back up with those colours if you need to, because that will happen. That will happen a lot. Yeah, of course, get those elbows picked out too. Next up is to get some gold. Now, I use 2 golds in this paint guide. Some greedy gold, which is a Fanatic paint, and then every now and again, I picked out and opted to use a little bit of the golden armour, which is one of the speed paints, but it's nicely thinned down. So I just jumped between those two. So on the red here, it made sense to use greedy gold, whereas later on, I opted to use a little bit of the speed paint instead, because of being a silver undercoat. Then it's just picking out some shields. Again, I'm making some splodges here. I'm not stressing it because I will be tidying those back up in a bit. Use the edge of the brush for the boss and some of that extra detail that's on there. I mean, I might change my mind later on how I paint those, but yeah, I am speeding through this. Then I'm gonna get some brown, and again, early days I was being quite neat with these, and then in the end I ended up just being a bit messy, and just as you'll see later on as the paint guide progresses. But yeah, I just picked out the feet, the sandals. I am not going to be picking out the toes. If someone wants to do that, all the power to you. I am not doing that. Then it was just a matter of picking out the plumes, and I'm just using some black for that. I've just followed the box art. I'm sure they have other colours, but I went with black. Then it's just a matter of picking out the spear tips with a little bit of silver. Then it's just a matter of applying a wash or shade all over. Here I'm using some strong tone. It's quite heavily to start off with, then I added a little bit of water and then just thinned out where things like the shields was. Again, remember to make sure you do everything on that sprue. And you will notice as well, even though I'm applying it quite heavily, a lot of the darkness is going into those cracks where it's all red between their legs and stuff. So that's going to do a lot of the hard work for me. I'm picking out the details that matter, and the shade is filling in all the gaps for me. And it's just a matter of clipping it off the sprue. And just take your time, work your way around. I did clip it, but it didn't come off very well, so I just had to give it a little tug. Use a knife to clean off any excess, especially if you've got any like feed lines still attached. And then basically the arms either side, like the shield and one of the arms, you will need to remove some of that flash off there as well. And then it's just a matter of gluing the 3 parts together. I mean, you can just leave them at this point, but I'm going to add some extra little details just to finish them off. So I'm just going to do like some little straps or the belts at the back. Again, it's thinned down black, so I'm not going to be too mad and precious. Bearing in mind, you know, you've got a lot of these and only so many hours in the day. I did decide I wanted to add a bit more brightness to the shields. I thought they were a bit too dark, so just got myself a bit of pure red out and laid that over. Again, not necessary. This is like an extra step if you want to go that far. Again, I just do a couple of little brush strokes here and there on either side. I still have some of that other colour shown through, so it does give it a little bit more definition. And, you know, mistakes will happen, as I did with the red earlier, but I'm just tidying back up over there with gold. Pick out some of the edges of the shield as well with a bit of gold too. You can wash the skin if you wish to. Just out a bit of interest to the actual shield, I decided to freehand some designs. It's meant to be the wolf design that you get on the actual transfers, so I was just mimicking that. Or it could be a laurel wreath, entirely up to you. But from a distance, it just looks like a weird wolf laurel wreath. Does the job for me. I'm happy enough with it. So this last bit is just a little bit of camouflage and a little bit of weathering. When I say camouflage, what I'm doing here is just adding a little bit of interest to the models by making them look a bit weathered and dusty. And that really does add a little bit extra finish to the models. And it looks like you spent more time on them than you actually did. You can also do it on the feathers as well, just for a bit of definition. So you can see, I mean, obviously close up with the camera, they're not the most beautiful thing, but when you've got a few of them on the tabletop and they're at arm's length, that's where they're coming to their own. There's no sort of like ego here. I'm not trying to win competitions. I'm trying to help you guys get stuff on the tabletop, and that is the sole goal of this video. So I am more than chuffed with the end result. It's the tactics as well. It's the little things like putting those symbols on. I mean, the decals will be better. I freehanded mine, but also the little bit of dirt at the bottom. That little bit of dust and dirt really adds that extra little bit of camouflage, I suppose, to the overall aesthetic. And when you've got like, I don't know, 12 units of these on the tabletop, it's going to look mega. So with those done, we're going to now move on to the Triarii. I decided to do something a little bit different than these, instead of like doing red, because on the actual box cover they have different coloured shields. I was like looking at lots of different shields, so I decided to go white and blue with these. But they all started from a silver undercoat. So let's crack on and paint some Triarii. So with the Triarii, I sprayed them silver. I also did the Principate silver as well, because they also have lots of chainmail or mail. So it made sense to spray them all at the same time. Again, as you can see, I've cut the sprue into a little shape that's relevant to the things I want that colour. And I can easily hold it whilst I paint it as well. First step is just to go around and pick out some red on the sleeves. The great thing is, once you get started, because they're quite similarly posed in this line of troops, you kind of get a bit of a product line going on, so just speed up a little bit. Then it's a matter of just picking out faces, so a little bit of flesh. Again, I'm not going to go into all the nooks and crannies because the wash will do that for me. You might want to do a second coat if you think it needs a bit more punch, but just work your way around, do the elbows. And of course, don't forget to do the back of the legs. What great legs. These guys have got great legs. I wish I had legs like that. I mean, in hindsight, I could have just done this section all brown, which would have been the spears, the boots done, and I could have just then done the flesh after. But you learn these things as you go along. It's all part of the process sometimes. Then I'm using some of that golden armor speed paint over the actual helmets here. It's got a bit more of a bronzy kind of tone to it, and as it pulls away, it will give like a bit of a silvery sheen on the edges, so you kind of get a bit of a highlight. That bit of brown was quite messy, but that's fine, because again, the wash is going to do all the heavy lifting. Originally I did the whole spear brown, but as you can see here, I just stopped at the tip. Makes more sense. Then it's picking out some white. This is actually something called brain matter beige. I'm just using this for the plumes and the shields, and again a second coat if needed. Then any little details like gold on those shield bosses, pick them out, and then it's wash central. Again, you can add more water to the actual wash where the shields are if you don't want it to be too like dirty or grimy. On the back here, I'm not that bothered because, well, it's mostly mail and a bit of red. Then if you feel it needs it, just tidy up the shield with the colour you base coated it with. Just add a bit more punch. Same for the plumes as well. And to be very different, I decided to add some blue to these just for a little bit of variety, really. And again, trying to do that little stylized wolf design that probably looks like nothing like a wolf. From a distance, it looks fine. It looks fine. And of course, there's some sculpted detail. Sometimes with the spray, it can hide it. And I've used light colours here, so it does hide it a bit as well. So there's not much definition. But it is a nice little detail, that little swirl. So, you know, you've got choices of doing that or whatever. And again, bit of weathering. Looks like I spent a little bit longer than I actually did. And there we are, the Triarii are done. Again, it's quick, it's dirty. I like the blue flashes on there. You get the details obviously added in there, like I mentioned, but I wanted to add my own little details. Again, I'm probably going to flog this horse to death. There are decals in the set. You don't have to do what I'm doing here. I'm just being mad and mental. So we're going to move on to a Roman general or commander. But whatever I do with this guy is relevant to all the loose stuff. So like the cavalry and any of the skirmishers, like the velites, any slingers and stuff like that. So all the heavy cavalry, light cavalry, generals, just follow the principle I've done here. And I probably would spray them all brown as well. Give a light dry brush of a lighter brown, like you'll see in this video, because it just speeds things along. For all my skirmishers and cavalry, as well as the commanders, they've all been sprayed brown. So all I'm doing here is dry brushing a lighter brown over that as well. Again, just work your way around, be a bit light to start off with, then build up a couple of coats just to add a bit more heaviness to that actual dry brush. Then it's a matter of picking out the colours you want. So whatever colour you want the robe. Here I think I went traditional red with some gold just so he looks like the rest of the guys. Again, you've got the box art paint jobs. You can always use those as reference. So I just went around, picked out some red bits. So cloak, plume, reins, tassels, all the horse furniture. There's bits here that will be gold, but it just makes sense just to paint them red right now. And then it's gold details like the breastplate, helmet, those ringlets on the actual horse furniture as well. So lots of little gold details here and there. Then I wanted to pick out some white, so you got his tassels coming from his skirt. So I thought I'd pick those out in white, as well as his sleeves as well. I also forgot his shirt sleeve, that needs to be red. So I just quickly did that. I did a second coat on the cloak, as well as the plume. That needed a little bit more too. Then it's picking out the skin. Again, you just got a couple of bits here, arms, face, knee, bit of calf, bit of shin. when he's got some face detail, can't tell, you know, if he has a beard or not. So I just did the whole thing flesh. Again, I'm not bothered if I make mistakes here. And then picking out the horse's mane with a bit of black as well. And it's washing the guy completely in strong tone. Once that's dry, tidy up any colours you want to, like the base paints. So I'm just re-tidying up the base red a bit, still leaving some darker bits in the recesses. Try and get like some kind of plume on the plume, so it looks a bit feathery. Then I used angelic red just for a little bit more punch on his cloak, as well as his plume. Again, at this scale, unless you're really, really bothered, you're not going to get that much in the way of highlights on models. Just the impression of highlights. And I just picked out little bits of the skin because they were a bit muddy and dirty in places. So like, I guess his knees, his cheeks, his nose, and then tied up the gold a bit for a bit more punch because washes can make them a bit dull as well. So we've done our Roman general. I'm now going to move on to the Carthaginian side. Now, I'm just going to pick two things from the Carthaginians. I'm going to do the Libyan heavy infantry, and I'm also going to cover doing an elephant. I'm not going to do the crew of the elephant because you kind of get that from watching the Libyan heavy infantry. It's the same process. But yes, I'm just going to cover a couple. Again, it's the same processes that I've used for the Romans. I'm just using different colours. So we're going to crack on painting some Libyan heavy infantry, which I'm actually really looking forward to because they're bright and pretty. Not saying the Romans aren't, but they've got more cool colours. I like Carthaginians. What can I say? Lesson learned from some of the earlier stuff. I decided to do the whole of the bottom of the legs brown because it also covers the spear shaft as well. Now we're from a grey undercoat, and that is me assuming that people don't have a million sprays. So sometimes you just have to spray it a colour and then just do it the old-fashioned way and work your way around. If you can get a colour that's relevant, great. If not, then just do what I'm doing here, spray it a colour, and then just start picking out the bits you need to. Also realised they've got lots of beards, these guys, so it made sense to do the faces a bit brown. Doesn't matter if you get on the helmet, because that's going to be gold anyway. Brown's a nice base for a gold. And it's picking out the shirt with a little bit of silver. Again, as you can tell, I've got some brown on that, so this is where that can just be removed. I don't know why I was being so neat around by the sleeves because they're going to get painted in a minute anyway, but you know, I felt good about doing it that way. And then picking out the spear tips. Again, once you start doing one or two, you get a feel for it, and then you can just do a nice little product line. And any gold details. So I'm going to do the shield's gold initially, and then I'll add some colour later. But that'll include like doing like the banding around it, and some shields will stay gold, some will have, you know, a variety of tones. Of course, the helmets. And again, I'm using greedy gold here because I thought that would work better than the speed paint version. When I was painting these and I started doing them in gold, I did think to myself, these look like firemen from the 19th century. I don't know why. It's just the hats made look like firemen. Then it's the greaves. Originally, I wasn't sure if these were actual just naked shins and knees, but then I double checked the box art, and yeah, it was armour. And then, of course, those beautifully formed legs on the back. These guys like wearing their skirts short, don't they? Again, just giving the impression of doing it. You don't have to go all the way to the edges and get hung up on trying to make sure it goes into all the cracks, because the shade's going to do that. Then once you've done the arms and the elbows, it's just a matter of picking out the faces. Again, a bit like I did with the Hastati, just not quite a dry brush, not quite a base coat, just a little bit of a flick of the colour. It kind of helps define where the eyes are, I suppose, but if you really care about that, just don't worry if you don't. Just completely coat the thing in flesh. Then I moved on to picking out the sleeves. I chose for two colours here instead of having loads. I went with a nice sky blue because I thought it looked quite pretty, and it seems to be a colour they used a lot. And then a nice purple colour. I think they're more pinky kind of tones, more lilac, but I went with purple because, well, it's a nice tone. And I did almost forget as well to do the front sleeve sticking out. That helps add a little bit of colour to the front as well. And then it's just randomising the shields. Just like pick out the odd one here and there with a bit of purple. I didn't want to do blue on the front. That felt a bit weird. So I was looking at the actual box art stuff again as reference. So I went with white as my other colour, as that looks quite nice. And again, you want to do a couple of coats on there as well. Then once the shields are done and the model's base coated, it's a matter of just washing them and getting that strong tone all over. Again, it's just working in the cracks, doing all the hard work there. On the actual shields themselves, I added a little bit of water to my brush so it won't pull too much and be too dark and dirty and grimy. Wanted those colours to punch out a bit more. Whereas at the back, I kind of wanted that armour to look a bit darker. And once they're dry, just add a bit more pop to some of the colours. Just go back over a base coat. Especially things like the bright tones, like the sleeves, the shields, where I've got like some purples and whites on there. Of course, the skin as well. Can't forget that. And also if I've got any brown on there too, because that does happen. Then they look cheerful. Beautiful colours. Then I thought to myself, oh yeah, they've got some belts. I'll pick those out with black. I just reorientated the actual sprue just so I can easily get into some of the nooks and crannies. Definitely speeds up the process a bit. Just work it around and make it work for you as the painter. Now, freehand time. Yep, no decals, that's fine. Like doing this kind of stuff anyway, it's my favourite thing. So we're doing what looks like an Abydos symbol from Stargate, but actually it pans out, it's just a very cheerful lady in a dress. It's actually called the Tanit symbol, or Tanit symbol. So I did a couple of those. Did red on the white and white on the purple. And on the gold shields, I also picked out some red designs as well, but not on these ones that you're seeing here. And then there's that sickle moon with the circle, shield, sun. Looks like a clown's nose and mouth, to be fair. With that white background, it really does. It's a very happy clown. Again, cut back in with the base coats as well. If you find like your design's a bit like, well, it's just not working for you. Then it's a matter of just gluing the models to the base. Use whatever glue you're happy with. I use super glue. I use it a lot. I prefer using that. And then just, get them glued on. There we are. The Libyan heavy infantry done. Really pleased with these. I'm a big firm fan, as I've mentioned a couple of times now in this video, of Carthaginians. And I think I will probably build these up entirely and make a huge force of them because I like Carthaginians. They're great. And elephants. That's what we're going to touch on now. Who doesn't like elephants in their army? Amazing. So the first thing for the elephant really is to do the majority of the model, which is the skin. So I'm giving that a good dry brush all over. You can just work your way around, doing the face, the ears, that lovely textured body it's got. I also quickly got some bone as well, just to do the tusks. Initially I was going to dry brush it, then it kind of turned into a bit of a wet brush, stroke base coat. But what I did do after that was use that same colour off my brush to just do a little bit of dust around the bottom of the feet. So I just worked my way around and just added a little bit of a dustiness. Then it's picking out the howdah. I wasn't, again, sure how I wanted the howdahs to look. I know they're going to have some colour on it, so I thought what I'll do is paint it all brown to start off with. I can change my mind as time goes on. Maybe leave some brown on there, maybe leave some brown in the middle. They do look quite splendid and have lots of colour on them, but I just thought I'll go brown first, and then I can make my mind up after. Then for the cloth on the elephant, there's shabrak. Well, that's what they call it on Cavalry anyway. I put that in red. Just thought it looks quite nice. Kind of ties in with some of the colours with the Carthaginians. I know the Romans are red as well, but there's a lot of colours on these elephants. Also did the corners of that howdah as well. I don't know what you want to call them, towers. They look like little castle towers, don't they? Again, once I've applied the base coat, I did a second coat where it was needed because it can be quite wishy-washy. Then the quilting, I wanted to add a little bit of that purple that's across the Carthaginian army I've done so far, so I decided to do a couple of coats of that on the quilting as well. I also decided to do the straps. So they've got like some harness straps going around the sides and around the back as well. So they got coated in the purple too. Then the shield, like I've done with all the other shields for the Carthaginians, I just picked those out in gold. There's one on either side. At some point I might change what actually goes on them. Might have white in the middle, not decided. And there's a bit of chain on the sides there. And then just for a bit of punch of that blue that's across the army, I did that on the trim of the quilting as well, because it looked pretty. Any tidy ups, because I made a couple of mistakes here and there. Pick out the eyes with a little bit of black. They're quite really nicely sculpted eyes, so quite easy to get to. And the colour I used for the tusks, I also used for the toes as well. Just thought I'd add a little bit more interest to the feet. And also tied up the tusks. And then, again, wash the whole thing. Really coat it all over that model. I love doing this. I know people say it's talent in the bottle, but it really is, especially with stuff at this scale, because it's so forgiving. Like when you've like not quite gotten to recesses or there's little bits of detail that are just a bit, it's really good for just hiding that. In some places I added a little bit of water to my brush just to, make it not too blotchy on like some of the reds and purples and the shields. And then once it was all dry, I just tidied back up some of those colours with the base paint I used. Because they do look quite muddy and a bit dirty, but actually that adds to it, especially at this scale. So yeah, just worked my way around, just layering up some raised areas for the red. Tidied back up the tusk a bit. I could have gone a bit more streaky with that, but you know what? I wasn't that bothered. And again, the feet, even though I've already painted that and it's been washed, it just adds that a little bit more definition to it. In fact, looking at this now, I think I put more effort into this elephant than I did the rank and file, but the elephants are quite big in comparison. I also did a highlight of orange on that cloth that's going across it as well. And then the old stabby at the bottom there, my jaggedy highlights. Makes it look a little bit battered and worn. And I also used it on the edge there of the howdah too. And then I did the jaggedy highlights on that blue strip, so it looked more like the edging of a quilt. I just thought it would be quite nice, just gives it a bit of different texture. And then I picked out the shield with a bit of white. Thought, you know what, I quite like the white on the shields. Let's do that on the howdah. And again, it's just another colour. You don't have to do this, you could leave it gold. This is just me, I just wanted to make a little bit more of a feature of some of the elements on here. And again, I did that Tanit symbol, or Stargate symbol, whichever you know most. Hey, I'm happy lady, yeah! Life is good. On the other side, I decided to do another symbol, because I didn't want them to look both the same. I thought that makes sense. I thought I went with a smiley clown. And then, as always, if necessary, just a little bit tidying up with the base paint if your freehand is a bit skew-if or a bit blotchy in places, which does happen. I mean, I often preach on, say, do all your freehand in the base coat stage, but sometimes that's not always practical. There we are, the elephant is done. As you noticed, it was all glued entirely. That was the only sort of thing that I glued and didn't paint on the sprue. It made sense to do it that way, as opposed to having lots of bits. The crew stayed on the sprue, but the elephant I glued. Made sense. The other elephant as well, I've done two for this little video. I kind of just reversed some of the colours, not the elephant skin, but like the other colours on it, like the howdah and stuff, which is, you know, that's the key thing, I think, with this video as well. And with a lot of my videos, if you've never watched the channel before, you don't know anything about it, I try not only to like find quick, easy ways, show mistakes being made, how to fix them, but also try and keep the color palette as minimal as possible. So I didn't use probably more than 15 paints in this guide, and try to, you know, mix and match them where I could. So wherever there's reds, it's the same red. Obviously with the Carthaginians, I had to throw in a bit of purple and like sky blue in there, but all the other colors were ones I used on the Romans as well. So yeah, it's just for you folks at home. You don't have to go out and spend a fortune on paint as well as obviously figures, because it can, especially if you follow my guide and need like 4 or 5 spray cans, but you will use those with other projects as well. So yeah, keeping that color palette to a minimum is key, and I think armies look better for it. It's something I think a lot of painters do subconsciously. You might not even know you do it, you probably do it, but using every color under the sun actually just makes your collection look more eclectic. Obviously things like when you go to sort of the Gaul side of stuff and like the barbarian horde or whatever, then they have lots more colors on the shields and they have lots more flamboyant tones. And I guess this is the other thing as well, where when you're painting historical stuff, there is an element of artistic license. Sometimes you can try and make things look like they look in the books. Like let's take Osprey books, for instance. You got some cool art of like a Carthaginian or a Macedonian. Translating that onto a miniature isn't always doable, or would look worse for it. So sometimes you have to make some sacrifices, you have to make some artistic licenses, and I've done that with my guys. You know, maybe the Romans didn't have white shields with blue designs on it. I just wanted to do that because I thought it looked cool. And it makes them stand out as like a more of elite unit or whatever. I mean, because the danger as well with the Romans is you can have a horde of red shielded, red sleeved, red plumed warriors or black feathers, and it might be quite hard to identify which units, which ones are the Hastati again, which ones are the Triarii again. I can probably tell by the shields, but I'm playing them and they're all facing away from me. Oh yeah, the Hastati have cloaks, but the rest have got chainmail. So actually just picking out the odd little colour here and there helps you as the player identify the different units too. Now, one thing I didn't expect from this video was to find myself getting massively enthusiastic about ancients again. I've stopped and started ancient projects multiple times in the past, as I mentioned at the start of the video. But just painting these small, tiny Carthaginians and Romans really got me excited. And I've got like 2 small forces, because I've not got the full set that's the Hannibal set, but it's enough to play like a fun game in my lad. But I've just found that I want to paint some more, ancient historical stuff. So as Peachy, as I am, I like my skirmish game stuff. So I'm now looking at like, what if I buy some like Greeks and maybe some Carthaginians and maybe some Romans, and just have like a handful of guys, maybe like no more than 30, and have a couple of warbands. Oh, there's loads of Osprey rules out there as well that do skirmish games. So now, yeah, thanks Warlord Games for getting me excited about a new project that I didn't think I needed. So yeah, at some point down the line, I'll be doing small skirmish warbands for ancients, and maybe even adding more to my epic related battle stuff. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found something useful from it, whether that's just like quick ways of getting epic stuff on the tabletop, or whether that's just a different approach you may not have thought about. But actually, yeah, using a spray paint is quicker than, you know, spraying them all grey and then picking them all out or whatever. So yes, thank you for watching. And a big thank you to these beautiful people, my Roman and Carthaginian generals. You can see them all going by right now. Without them, this channel wouldn't be possible. I won't get away with just sitting in my spare room painting lots of tiny little figures. It's great, love it. So thank you so much. In the words of Hannibal, I suppose, I love it when a plan comes together. No. Did he say that? Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was too busy eating livers and drinking a nice Chianti. Is that Hannibal? So many Hannibals. I'm sure Hannibal said something profound. Drop in the comments what he said. Let's find out what Hannibal actually said. Okay, I'm typing in Hannibal Barker quotes, and it's literally coming up with Hannibal Barker quotes. Let's see what quotes Hannibal Barker has. Let's have a quick scoot. What's he got? We will find a way, or we will make one. That's a good quote. I would like that. Maybe that's going through the mountains. I don't know. Nothing more isolating than a mental illness. Hannibal was on the ball. He was pretty progressive. Dogs keep a promise a person can't. Very true. Very true indeed. Let's have a look here. All good things come to those who wait. Did Hannibal actually say that? I like it. All good things come to those who wait. Words to live by, everybody. You waited long enough for this video to finish. Right. Peachy signing out. Bye.